Our history is no more than a series of incredible events. Each one of us can influence its course. From the birth of a 1,000-year empire to the end of a flourishing civilization. From the creative genius of a handful of men to a global cultural revolution. From the darkest totalitarian visions to the most terrifying great wars. From the heroic resistance of an entire people to the unbreakable will of a minority. The tiniest of our decisions can influence the future of mankind. To know the past is to anticipate the future. March 24th, 1999, Stanford top secret base. For decades, nobody was able to locate this place. But tonight, hacker commandos from the free world are within a hair's breadth of pulling off their coup. Tomorrow, the internet will belong to humanity. Years previously, the US Air Force retrieved the source codes for the web before they could be released freely to the rest of the world. Today, the internet is a vast centralized network that gathers all the digital information of the planet on one single gigantic server. Nobody can create his own page or contribute to the web without going through the United States Defense Ministry. The internet is American property.
It's good.
But none of this ever happened. At the beginning of the 90s, a man will invent the web and immediately post the source codes on the internet. October 4th, 1957. The Soviets launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite in history. In the following years, in order to make up for their technological lag, the United States conducts an ambitious project, ARPA. August 6, 1991, computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee invents the web and puts the very first internet site online. These three intimately connected events are key in the birth and then the spread of the internet. Communication is an essential need for living beings. Each species uses the means at its disposal to communicate. Wolves howl at the moon. Whales sing in infrasound. Ants exchange odors. Among them, only one has learned to go beyond his own resources, to communicate further, faster, the human being. Very early, the first men were able to express their emotions in the form of words. Articulated language is one of the great advances of humanity. In antiquity, the Greeks, like the Chinese, organized chains of sentinels, each within sight of the other, the first system of long-distance alert. The invention of mail and fast forms of postal service, like the Pony Express, revolutionized the exchange of information. During the French Revolution, the telegraph is invented. By creating combinations of geometric shapes, messages are sent from Paris to Marseille in just a few hours instead of several days as previously. In 1837, Samuel Morse develops the first electric telegraph. A decisive event, it takes communications into a new age. From 1895 on, with the radio, it is no longer a question of sending messages to one person. It means distributing it on a large scale and for free. Antonio Meucci invents the telephone. Graham Bell files the patent. In 1877, the first telephone line is opened. In 1922, at the death of Graham Bell, there are 13 million telephones in service throughout the world.
Welcome to the memory of humanity. Here we can control time, analyze and compare billions of events, and alter them to rewrite history endlessly. Language is the ability to express a thought and communicate it by way of a system of signs. We agree on it, and everybody understands. Samuel Morse did not only invent a communications tool, he also developed a language, Morse. To each letter of the alphabet, he associated a series of dots and dashes, both visual and sonic. This very simple code can be transmitted equally well by electric impulses or by light signals with a simple flashlight. The Morse code for the alert SOS has become the universal distress signal. A common language is the foundation stone of all human enterprise. Imagine a world where all people speak the same language. Exchanges and collaboration would be much more efficient. No more fastidious translations, no more misunderstandings. But wouldn't our world also be less rich? Languages are an integral part of our cultures. A single language would be very practical, but it would certainly be a threat to the world's cultural diversity.
In the 20th century, technology is put to the service of a new form of communication. We can speak on the telephone to a friend at the other end of the earth because the network allows it. A whole complex system was developed and set up. From the user's point of view, this technological octopus is represented by a telephone. To be suitable for the public, a communication system must be efficient and easy to use. In 1946, the very first computer in history is invented. 30 tons with a surface of 750 square feet. It consumes 140 kilowatts and fills an entire hangar. It is reserved exclusively for military research. We are still a long way from a technology that is accessible to all and easy to use. 20 years later, the Mastodon has been miniaturized. A digital triumph. It can now fit in the backseat of a car. 1975 sees the founding of Microsoft, a private company selling computers designed for the general public. The next year, it's Apple. Computers are not yet handheld, but fit easily onto a desk. In 1980, France develops its Teletel, the first general public telematics network. It is named after its terminal, the Minitel. A major avenue opens when the Macintosh goes onto the market. For the first time, a computer includes drawing software, a word processor, a mouse, and a graphic interface. Before the 80s, computer technology was perceived as an instrument of control. It now becomes a tool for freedom and creativity available to all. But to communicate, the computer is not enough. It has to be connected to a network. This network is developed in parallel with computer technology, but in a more discreet way. Its origin lies, curiously enough, in the launch of the Soviet Sputnik satellite in 1957. The United States is now faced with a huge technological lag. They respond with the launch of NASA and the race to space, but also with the creation of ARPA in 1958. Run by the Defense Department, ARPA's mission is to maintain the technological level of the American Army far ahead of its rivals and enemies. ARPA is highly active, and the American Army is indebted to it, for, in particular, the GPS system, Predator drones, and the exoskeletons. In 1965, a computer in California is connected to another in Massachusetts. It's the first extended network in history. Humanity takes its first steps into cyberspace.
Troubled beginnings. The first computer weighed 30 tons. The cell telephones of today weigh a few hundred grams, can be held in the hand, and are incomparably more powerful. The first extended computer network connected two computers to each other. Today, billions of computers are connected one to another and share dizzying amounts of information. Beginnings are often troubled and rarely glorious. It requires that people believe, see the potential, imagine the openings. It requires visionaries. In the last century, the first flights were more or less glides of a few dozen yards. Those machines, made of wood and canvas, were just able to support themselves. They were only capable of carrying a pilot, and that was it. No immediate application, no fame, lack of reliability. Aviation was often regarded as an activity for crazy eccentrics. But those madmen made progress. Slowly at first, for sure, but after decades and hundreds of failures, we could cross the Atlantic in a plane. Adopting an inverse model to computers, the more technology advanced, the bigger the planes became. The race for gigantism in aviation is the opposite of the race for miniaturization in computers. We can never know in advance what inventions will become. The only answer is to give it a try.
Two remote computers have been connected. It's a good start, but it's only the beginning. The idea is to create a network in the form of a huge web. They know that a centralized system is vulnerable because the destruction of its core causes the annihilation of communications. At this moment, Lawrence G. Roberts enters the stage. Roberts is an American computer scientist, physicist, and mathematician. Having joined ARPA, he develops a project known as ARPANET in 1967. The ancestor of the Internet, its objective is to transmit information from one computer to another by passing via a telephone network. On October 29, 1969, the year of the first step on the moon, the first message is sent. It's 10:30 p.m., a historic moment. On the screen, having traveled hundreds of miles in a flash, the message appears, L-O. These are the first two letters of the word login. But the connection failed, and the end of the word is cut off. The day of the first message is also the day of the first problem with connection. Then two computers are added to the network. 4 computer terminals form the core of the future Internet. Very quickly, they tried to make connections more secure, lighter. The best way is to divide outgoing messages into several pieces, each lighter and therefore easier to send. Sent separately, they are put back together when they arrive on the destination computer. A new protocol called TCP/IP increases the security of this dividing into pieces and guarantees their correct delivery. At the beginning of the 70s, the technique looks promising, but by itself, it serves no purpose. They now have to use it, find applications for it, and the potential is enormous. In 1971, Ray Tomlinson sets up the first basic software for sending and receiving electronic mail. To differentiate the sender from the host, he decides to separate the two with a symbol that doesn't figure in the alphabet, the @ sign. Simple as that. He then sends himself the first electronic mail. It contains the message, "Portiup," the top line of characters on a keyboard. In 1983, the part of the ARPANET belonging to the United States Armed Forces splits from the network and becomes the MILNET. At the end of the decade, individuals and private companies gained access to the network. For the first time, the word Internet is being used.
Cyberspace. Cyberspace is a term difficult to define. It's an intangible communications space created by the worldwide interconnection of computers, a meeting place, a new economic and cultural frontier, an issue of global conflict. It is a virtual space beyond excellence. It is sometimes seen as a territory guaranteeing freedom of circulation of information, transparency, sharing, democracy, equality, world peace, and progress. The vocabulary of cyberspace is, incidentally, rich with geographical references. We navigate on the web. Information flow moves through portals, gateways, channels, or ports. Eventually, we could even create a virtual country and become a citizen of it. Its borders would not be physical, but ideological. The possibilities of cyberspace are enormous. We can be in several different places at the same time. Everything is instantaneous. Everything can be stored in a memory. Everything can be shared and multiplied to infinity.
Freedom. From the beginnings of the internet, the social dimension of the project has been a major one. The technical advances are the fruit of very special ideologies and communities that have made the internet what it is today. Because although the internet is financed by the military, it was built by hippies. Hippie communities were born in the United States at the beginning of the 1960s. Supporters of the counterculture, hippies opposed both the consumer society and any form of authority. Today, the internet works according to a horizontal logic. All the pages making up the web are on the same level. None of them is dominant in the structure. This is not a coincidence. ARPANET, then the internet, are free to access. This principle goes against the logic of the consumer society according to which everything must be paid for. Its technical features, instead of being kept secret, like a copyright, were published so that all could access them. Designed and developed by engineers, the internet will, at a stroke, open up to the rest of the world. But for the general public, technology isn't enough. It has to be accessible, ergonomic, intuitive. It's Tim Berners-Lee, researcher at the CERN in Switzerland, who will invent this missing link. He imagines an internet equipped with a graphic interface. Using it could be made easy with a system of clickable links, called hypertext links. These buttons would make it possible to navigate from one page to another without keying a single line of code. By using a little editing program, any user could create his own site and host it within a global system. On March 13, 1989, Tim Berners-Lee synthesizes his vision in a memo that he gives to his superior. The superior notes, vague but exciting. Tim Berners-Lee has carte blanche. On August 6, 1991, Tim Berners-Lee announces the creation of the World Wide Web, HTTP and FTP protocols, and the HTML language. The web is born. The very first site hosted on a CERN server is put online. It's a web user's manual. Hosted on Tim Berners-Lee's computer, it describes the main features of the web and explains how to configure your own server. More important, it provides access to source codes. Every person in the world can access the heart of the internet. Nobody will now be able to sell it. By this act, Tim Berners-Lee gives the web to humanity.
We have just reached a turning point. A turning point is a key event, a crossroads in our history where the world swings one way or the other. Tim Berners-Lee decides to provide free access to the source code, thus enabling anyone to create his own web server. He could have chosen to file a patent and market his invention. He would have been rich. Imagine a world where the web belonged to one of several companies. We can assume that each company would maintain its own network. Like an encrypted television channel, access would be paying. Their contents would be controlled and would be primarily for profit. This system would be like the French Minitel, paying to get information or a service without having to move. This is good, but the web that we know is far better than that. It belongs to us. It's not just about consulting, but also creating, sharing, and communicating. Anyone can create a page and the whole world can contribute to it. The web moves. It was built in a spontaneous fashion by amateurs passionate about computers and technology, hackers. Far from the stereotype, a hacker is a computer expert who creates, analyzes, and modifies computer programs to improve or provide new functions for the user. Now considered to be mere pirates, they are among the pioneers of the web. Their ideals were generally humanist. Tim Berners-Lee was a hacker himself.
By 1994, a worldwide technical and social phenomenon, the World Wide Web had to provide itself with a body to manage its evolution. This is the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C. Its president, Tim Berners-Lee. The Internet was designed by American defense and research organizations at the end of the 1960s, then gradually generalized into the civil and commercial field. In 1985, there were around 1,000 users. In 1994, the number rose to more than 2 million and to nearly 3,420,000,000 in 2016. But the web designed by Tim Berners-Lee and the early hackers reached its limits. It had to evolve. The Web 2.0 is the fruit of this upgrade. Watchwords, interactivity, and participative. The web becomes both technically more complex and operationally simpler for the user. Now the RSS flow can show on a single page content provided by multiple sources, and each net user can participate in real time. The age of the Web 2.0 is one where the user can be active, participate, and even create. The web is no longer considered as a collection of sites to be visited, but as a platform that allows exchanges between users. It's an explosion of blogs, wikis, photos, and video sharing, search engines. From the end of the 1990s, social networks appear on the internet. They take the form of groupings of individuals or organizations that discuss, talk, and exchange with each other. They share opinions, ideas, or content. From now on, the only existing frontier is a community of interest. Today, Facebook is the biggest social network site in the world. In December 2015, it had more than 1 billion active users daily. Through such communities, the user is responding to a latent and primal need to socialize. On the internet, the tribal mechanism finds a formidable tool. Yesterday, we were living in an imposed group, the family. Today, the importance is given to the individual. Tomorrow, the internet will take humanity into a world where individualism will be associated with the notion of a selected group. Or maybe we're already there. But that is another story.
In 2015, out of more than 7 billion human beings, 3 billion have access to the internet. Every day, users spend an average of 4.4 hours on the net. The amount of information transmitted is astronomical. It is not deleted. Every word typed into a search engine like Google is recorded. Somewhere, somebody knows what searches you have done. He knows your areas of interest, your eating habits, your movements. This information is captured, stored, and analyzed with one precise aim: to sell advertising space. This is the reverse of the coin. The internet is open and free, but the people who design the sites have to make a living. There are plenty of institutions seeking to regulate the internet. Some states have introduced restrictive laws. In parallel, surveillance laws abound, and many countries exercise tight control of the network. Forbidden content is thus blocked in the majority of authoritarian countries, but also in the democracies. Where net freedom is concerned, China is the most restrictive country. Recently, in reaction to the Arab Spring, Egypt was able to cut access to the network by applying pressure to internet providers. Citizens were cut off from the rest of the web within a few hours. The internet was born out of a utopia, a dream of hippie computer experts seeking to change the world. They forged a functional, sturdy, and living tool. Driven by a vision of a free world where everyone would be treated as equals, faced with economic reality and the consumer society, internet hackers were not content to persuade us that it was possible. They proved it.